Merry Meet Annie here. We'll start off today's reflection with one of my poems and then, I'll share where that then took me in light of today's consideration. Each thing in nature has its place in the whole, and the whole would be less without each thing. There is structure underlying creation. All of nature speaks a shared language carried on the wind. No matter the duration of each thing, it is pure and perfect in its time. In the face of constant change, nature preserves its identity. I am strong alone and strong part of. The truth matters. I will seek it. I will speak it. Above all else, I will be loyal to myself. Where considerations of the word integrity, the reflection for the day, take me is not to the dictionary definition of being honest and having strong principles. Now, that form of integrity is best explored in the season of fire, and it will return in the reflections, I'm sure, at that time of the year, somewhere around midsummer. Now, this form of integrity, the one in the reflection for today, is a consideration of wholeness and completeness, that of each thing in the world and of ourselves, each thing perfect as it is. Integrity in the season of Yule and in the season of Earth is the understanding or the seeking to understand who we are and who we are in relation to everything else. Not a focus of just one season, for sure. A lifelong focus, to say the least. But in this season, we consider the tenderness of our gods and what they teach us about finding our own way. We consider the strength of the season, with each thing starkly standing out in relation to what surrounds it, and how it is connected to everything else. And we consider who we are as we respond to the returning light of inspiration that will guide us into creating our small and large masterpieces of life in the next seasons. This kind of integrity is about knowing our place. We recently had a session in Season of the Dedicate on the maxim of the Oracle of Delphi, Noscete ipsum. Know thyself. The most fascinating aspect of it is those words. Well, more than anything else, they were intended as a challenge. They were chiseled in stone above the entrance to the temple of Apollo that housed the oracle. And they were often issued as a challenge by the oracle before she spoke in prophecy. Imagine everything you went through. It was a long process to prepare for your audience with the oracle. And probably without looking up, I imagine she would just say, Noscete ipsum. Challenging. Your absolute right to even be before her. This knowing of ourselves, this noscete ipsum, this kind of integrity, is knowing our place. Our place in our lives, in community, in the world, in relation to our gods and our guides. Well, basically our relation to everything that's not us. Integrity is the willingness to explore our place. Perhaps we should say our many places, the places we naturally reside. And the courage not to accept it as an unchanging status quo. Our place changes. This kind of integrity is also about spiritual integrity, asking us to consider the wholeness of our relationship with our spiritual practice and our relationship with our concept of God's wisdom and higher power, but as well our bringing of all the parts of our spiritual selves together and in alignment to a purpose. Perhaps we're at a point in our lives where that purpose is to respond to the challenge of the oracle, to get to know who we are, and then to know who we are in relation to everything else. As the spiritual year progresses, spiritual integrity becomes the understanding of the great work of our lives. And that will most definitely be part of our reflections come the season of fire. Simply put, spiritual integrity is the difference between thinking and doing. We cannot be whole if we're centered in our head. The whole world does not exist here. There comes a time when what we've been thinking about becomes what we must do. And the wisdom of the season is that everything we do, everything we choose to make of ourselves, must align to the entirety of who we are. No parts of us left behind. This kind of integrity is also about personal integrity. Integrity in the season of Yule is honoring the spark of unique life within us, within each of us, and acting in accord with that. Integrity in this season is to understand our completeness or to seek to understand it. When we have some sense of our wholeness, we can then recognize our potential. That understanding of our wholeness is not the end of the journey. In a way, it's the very beginning. It's nearly impossible to realize our potential when we exist as a tornado of scattered bits that we've not called home to ourselves. A wise teacher of mine taught us several things to keep in mind when it came to integrity and authenticity. I love it when her words come up in this reflection each year because I get to remember the conversations I had with her all over. She presented what I'm going to share next on a piece of paper to each of us with a checkbox next to each item. And she told us that our work was to explore any one that we could not, with absolute confidence, check off. Here's the things she had in her list of items to be checked or not. I am the same person with all people. I honor the challenges that life brings me as a way to mature my energy and spirit. I admit my mistakes and make appropriate apologies. I honor my commitments and promises without fail. I take time to consider before reacting and responding. I am comfortable saying no and explaining why that is sometimes the answer. I have established personal values and I honor them. And my outer life aligns to my inner one. I am living from the soul outwards. Every year when I revisit these, I discover a new combination of what I could honestly check and what needs exploration to find out why in the moment it cannot be. Somewhere along the way, I added one of my own, and mine is, I respect the person I see in the mirror. Not sometimes, not when I've done something I'm especially proud of or when I've survived a situation that tested me, but every time I look in the mirror. When the person I see in the mirror is not at their best, I love them and support them and guide them back to the best they can be. That person is not perfect, but they are truly the only thing I've got. And my promise to them is to stand by them, encourage them, forgive them, love them, and honor them. I've put Rachel's items of checklisted things in the text box for this video. You can also, of course, find them in the document that supports this video on my Patreon page in the public part of that. It's interesting to see which of those boxes we can at any time check. At times during our life, we are able to check all of them. It's always interesting when there's a confluence of things in our life and we realize, well, in this moment, I can check them all. That's when we're truly experiencing the depth of integrity at all levels. I wish you worth and reverence. Mary Part.